This episode is brought to you by the Boochow Radio Podcast, Episode 8. If you haven't seen it yet, please click on the link in the description box on your right. In case you don't know, Naughty Dog has been Sony's #1 company that made exclusives for all their consoles, the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 3. This video game company has been making great games for Sony's gaming systems and keep the lifespans going, and today, thanks to great companies like Naughty Dog, we now have the PlayStation 3. Even though that Naughty Dog is the company that has been there since the beginning, it is not the only company that has been making exclusives just for all of Sony's consoles. Introducing Insomniac Games. They too have been with Sony and never turned back to another gaming system and became one of the most successful small video game companies along with Naughty Dog. I know that Insomniac Games and Naughty Dog are allies and very supportive towards one another, so what's the point of making a drama scene like as if Sega versus Nintendo? Well, like I said, both of these companies were always with Sony since Sony was in the gaming market, and not once, as far as we know, has either one of them turned Sony's back, making fantastic games exclusively for Sony's consoles to this very day. The question is, which company is better? Many of my subscribers are dying for me to do a review on many of their games, and it seems too much to handle making reviews on each of their games. Well, rather than making too many boring and unoriginal reviews, the next series of videos I am going to do Naughty Dog vs. Insomniac Games. Yes, I know that I took this idea from Nostalgia Critic's Old vs. New, but I've been a huge fan of these video game companies since my days of the PlayStation 1, and still part of them to this day of gaming. Both of these video game companies have made very similar games and at the same time made changes, looking like they're trying to compete for who's better for Sony. To me, they are the perfect video game companies to compare and contrast. I know that I'm not the only one that cares about these companies, and it's been over a decade and it's time to declare a winner for who's the better company. In this series of videos, I am going to take 2 installments of each series in each era from both companies and see which game is the better game. And if there is a better game than the other, then that company earns a point. The one with the most points after naming all the games is the better company. Just to let you guys know that this is not factual evidence, but this is all based on my opinion, so don't get sensitive or act like a baby when I choose one game over the other. Without further ado, let's begin this series of videos. This is Naughty Dog vs. Insomniac Games series. Round 1. The early days. Like everything that coexists, there is always a beginning. Naughty Dog Games began in 1986 with the founders Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin, two best friends trying to follow their dreams of becoming the video game developers. Before they were named Naughty Dog, they were Jam Software, making games for Apple like Math Jam, Ski Grazed, and Dream Zone. But since they are not Naughty Dog games, we'll have to skip it. Renamed from Jam Software to Naughty Dog, Gavin and Rubin's first Naughty Dog game was an adventure game for Apple called Keef the Thief on 1989. After the user base of Apple was shrinking, Naughty Dog jumped to consoles. Their first console game was a Sega Genesis RPG called Rings of Power, published by EA in 1991. Then in 1994, Naughty Dog jumped from the Sega Genesis to the 3DO and made Way of the Warrior. But for some odd reason, that game caught the attention of Universal Studios and became their publisher. But we'll talk about that on the next episode. Now on the competitor side, Insomniac Games started in 1994 with founder Ted Price. He was fortunate enough to make the first game, Disruptor, with Alex Hayes. They both tried whatever publisher they could release the game, but was rejected every time. Then finally, they found Universal Studios along with Naughty Dog. Then in 1996, the first-person shooter Disruptor was released, and that was the beginning of the success of Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games. Now, we both know that these games were not their best work, but sure as hell not going to be discussed in this series of videos again. But which game, games, is better? We have 3 games on Naughty Dog's side versus a single game made by Insomniac Games. I've never played Keef the Thief and I can't find it anywhere, so we'll take that out of the list. But I have played Rings of Power and Way of the Warrior, and here are my opinions. First, let's talk about Rings of Power. I'm not going to criticize the graphics because it's early Sega Genesis, but unlike most RPGs at the time, such as Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, Rings of Power has a PC role-playing style like Wizardry and Dungeon Master and so much more. It's a decent RPG, but here's the main problem about the game. The difficulty is extremely hard. The fighting system takes a long time to finish, and the goal of the game was to achieve through careful attention and detailed contrast exploration. With all honesty, I gave up playing the game and watched the ending on YouTube, and it's nothing special nor is it bad, but certainly not the greatest RPG ever. So my score for Rings of Power is a 2 fingers out of 5. It's okay, but not that great. Now the next game, Way of the Warrior. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a ripoff of Mortal Kombat, but even more poor than Batman Forever. It's really hard to believe that Naughty Dog made this game. I have to admit that it's better than the Atari Jaguar's Kasami Ninja, but a shitty ripoff is a shitty ripoff. This game gets the same score as Kasami Ninja and all the other Mortal Kombat ripoffs. A 1 finger out of 5. Now on Insomniac Games, I have to say that Disruptor is a clone of Doom, but I must admit that this game is a lot more fun than any of the early games by Naughty Dog. Like Doom, it's fast-paced, action-packed, and everything else like Doom. But since this is above average Doom clone, I have to give this a low 3 fingers out of 5. But this is a game that's more replayable than Way of the Warrior. Point goes to Insomniac Games. What a way to go, 1-0. It seems as if Insomniac Games knew what they were doing, and Naughty Dog at the time just made whatever. But since both of these companies just made it to Universal Studios, this is where it gets interesting. If neither one of them made it to Universal Studios, then we wouldn't care about these upcoming games, nor would this series of videos even begin. I know that you fans of these video game companies weren't looking forward to see those games. But anyway, if you know anybody who knows or likes any of these games made by Insomniac Games or Naughty Dog, show them this videos and tell them this series. And if you like what you just saw, please subscribe to see more of it. And stay tuned for round 2 when we see which game in their Universal Studio days was better and who will make the next score.